I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Hi, fellow storyteller, and welcome back to the Business of Story. I've got a really interesting show today because I'm going to do something completely different than I've not done in the past 180 episodes. And I am going to invite our guest today to actually do a lot of the interviewing of me. And the reason why is, no, it's not a complete ego-driven program, although I could see why you might arrive at that. I have the distinct pleasure of keynoting this coming March in New Zealand at the New Zealand Social Media Conference. And on today's show, we have the founder, Wanita Z-Fourie. She goes by Z-Fourie at the end of her name to make it a little bit easier for all of us. But Wanita is joining us on the Business of Story. She's the founder of the Social Media Conference in New Zealand. And she's invited me to come down there. And I thought, boy, what better way for the attendees down under to have a better understanding of the Business of Story and what I'm about that I'll be bringing there. And also, by the way, bringing the social media marketing world in San Diego at the end of March, on March 20th through 22nd, then to have Wanita in her own expert way do some interviewing of me while I interview her so that you can find out and learn what is happening down under with social media and storytelling that you can apply in your world here, be it in America, North America, Europe, wherever you may be. So Wanita, I want to welcome you to the Business of Story. So great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Park. It is fantastic to be here.
Where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming to you from New Zealand. So I'm sitting in Auckland at the moment, beautiful sunny Auckland, and just having an absolute ball. I'm sitting in the World Podcast Association at the moment and having this conversation with you.
You're sitting at the World Podcast Association in their studios?
Yes, I am. It is absolutely fantastic. Such an amazing setup by Paul Spain and his team. So really, I wish you could be. In fact, you're going to be here. So when
I
you
get
come,
a chance to see it in about a month or so.
And I reckon we do another podcast when you're here in the studio.
Now, how much fun would that be? I'm definitely looking forward to that. Now, you have been a global world traveler. They call you, I guess, the African Kiwi? Is that right? Tell us a little bit about your background and how do you find yourself in Auckland heading up the largest social media conference down under?
And of course, when we talk about the largest, it's not even close to social media marketing world because of our population and our numbers and things like that. But I was initially born in South Africa and I came to New Zealand about 13 years ago and started my business about 6-7 years ago, going on 7 years now this year. So I started the Online Business Academy and it was all about social media, digital marketing, and educating people. And it was really interesting because at that time, and a lot of you would know, potentially we're behind in some things and we're ahead in other things. We're really innovative in New Zealand and we have the opportunity to innovate. But sometimes businesses take a little bit of time to get used to things. So social media six years ago was a real unknown. People didn't understand how it worked in business. And part of the journey is to build the community and build businesses so that they can grow and build the economy here in New Zealand.
And what brought you to Auckland in the first place?
Well, my husband initially arrived in New Zealand. We left South Africa. We wanted to give our children a better environment for growing up. And my husband came first and we followed. So we ended up here in Auckland. My cousin lives in Auckland. She was here first. And my husband has family here in New Zealand, in Taupo.
I see. So that's what, and were you doing social media work while you were in South Africa, or did you start really learning your chops when you got to New Zealand?
Well, social media even then wasn't like a big deal, even in South Africa. But no, I was actually running the Call Center Institute of South Africa. So again, it was all about people, communications. So what I was doing is helping the government with the learning and development and training and implementing learnerships into call centers in South Africa. So it was really, really a new innovation that was happening there to help lift again the economy and people in the industry. Call centers were pretty new at that stage. So I think I've always fallen into things that it's pioneering. It's something that you're doing that's new and exciting. I've loved how arriving here, I kind of tossed up whether I would run my own business again, went into corporate a little bit, and then went, no, I need to be doing this. I'm an entrepreneur. I love the corporate space for the fact that there's a lot of training and there's a lot of, heads together and people thinking, but it can also be quite stifling, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you want to move fast.
I suppose that's true the world over when it comes to large corporate bureaucratic environments.
Absolutely. But I think they have their place for certain people. I don't think everybody is an entrepreneur. And I think that some people fit into the corporate space and they do really, really well. And that goes even for, the social media space. There's amazing brains here in New Zealand that work in the corporate space, in social media and do amazing things for their companies.
So how long, or did you launch the social media conference there, or how long has it been around, and how have you seen it grow as the whole medium of social media has grown, throughout your corporate environments there?
I launched it next year, 2019 will be year 6 for the social media conference. I kind of saw a gap in the market and it definitely has grown. So the first conference that I had probably would have been classed more as a training session as opposed to a conference, in that there were probably only 50 people that were there, the very, very first conference. It now goes to about 300, 350, and that's the maximum that we can do anyway, in terms of venues and breakouts and things like that. Hopefully, the Sky City are building new venues, particularly for these things. So hopefully, we can expand it bigger as we can get venue space.
So you were at Social Media Marketing World last year, have been there a few times, I guess.
Yes.
What are the differences you see in how we approach social media, if there are any, out here in America, opposed to versus what you're doing there? And how, in some respects, do you feel like maybe you all are ahead of the game?
That's a really interesting question, Park. And I suppose I can only answer it from the perspective of the speakers that we kind of got to see when we were at Social Media Marketing World, and they're brilliant, and obviously they have a huge following and they have amazing following, but also I don't think it's very different. I really don't think it's very different. I loved your talk. I've been to see you obviously a few times, and hence the reason why I've invited you over to New Zealand to this social media conference, because I really believe what you were doing and what you said resonated, and I think people need that. So if I had to look at the comparisons, I don't think that there's any difference in terms of, small, medium businesses. I think people need to learn how to brand themselves properly. I think people need to learn how to tell their brand story right. I think people need to learn how to tell stories, when they are advertising, when they are putting content together, when they're putting blogs, and generally just as part of their branding, to tell their brand story. And I don't know if everybody kind of gets it right. I think as a small, medium business, it's probably a lot easier to adapt and change. But in a large corporate, you really need to, have that strategy in place and that focus so that if there's a turnover, you still continue with those stories and that brand. And I don't think that's any different whether here in New Zealand or in America.
Mm-hmm.
What I did find, there were some things that were being said in some of the talks that I was going, oh, really? You only know that now, or that's only you're just saying that now. That's not to sound arrogant. It was just like, oh, so there's some things that we've known about or beforehand.
That you've been using. Do you have an example?
Oh gosh, you're asking me that question now.
Maybe it's in the video realm or something.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, I think it was actually somewhere in the Facebook advertising realm where we kind of knew some things a little bit ahead of time, to particularly what the speaker was saying. So I'm not saying that no people didn't know it. It was just in terms of, what was being said at the time. And I thought, oh, wow, that's something we've been using already, and it's something we've been doing already. But again, I don't think there is much of a difference. I love the fact that in the US you've got so many great different, large corporates that that do put out quite a bit of good content and stories.
Yeah, so they're good case studies that we can all learn from. Now, in addition to finding or being the founder of the social media conference in New Zealand, you're also the founder of the Online Business Academy. And I know you are still underway. You're working that. You're still building your website out, but you've been doing the Online Business Academy for a little while. And you and I have had some conversations in lead up to the conference where you're out in the Great Barrier Islands and you're all over these exotic places, and all I can picture is you chasing after the ring to find the magical ring of social. Tell us a little bit about the work you do there and some of the real remote locations and clients you get to work with.
Oh, I love my job. So just to clarify, the Online Business Academy is actually the company, and the social media conference is a product of the Online Business Academy.
I got you.
So it's one of the many things that we do. I love doing strategy. It absolutely makes my heart sing. I love looking at businesses and seeing the digital and social strategy and helping them to move ahead. I get to visit the Great Barrier Island, so not to be confused with the Great Barrier Reef, which is in Australia and is beautiful and really should be visited. The Great Barrier Island is a real little remote island off New Zealand, and it's believed to be the first island that was discovered before New Zealand was actually discovered. And so it's Aotea. It's known as Aotea, and it is very rural. So 75% of the Great Barrier Island is owned by DOC, that's government. So therefore, only 25% of the island can really be inhabited. So it'll never be an island that will be populated unless the government decides to change that. So there are only 1,000 people that live on the island, but there are such amazing, innovative businesses. So they have to do things to bring in an income so that they can survive. And I've been working with literally all the businesses on the island. I go through and I do training for them, all different kinds of training. So
what kinds of businesses are they?
So I have a few stargazing businesses, so people that do tours for stargazing. There's a marae, so there's the Matarahe Marae at the moment, which is the Maori group. So it's the Maori family, and there are two on the island at the moment. They're putting together a whole stargazing and hongi. Hongi, by the way, is the traditional Maori food. So it's cooked in a pit, and they're one of the few that actually do it correctly. So they cook it in the in the pit and cover it and everything else, and then it cooks for
It's called honing?
a hongi,
Honey. Ah.
hongi, Hangi, hongi. And so they do stargazing. I have car rental companies there, so people that rent out their cars. So they're companies that do international, and then they're companies that do local. I work with the Great Barrier Island Trust and help them with their social media page, training people how to do it. So what I really do is upskill, but I do hands-on, so looking at what is it that they need to be doing that's different. And for example, so with the Great Barrier page, which was really, really interesting, when I looked at it and took it over with them, it was so interesting because they never had a brand voice. And what they never did, from what I could see, is establish who their audience was. And one of the first things that you want to know is who you're talking to. So, and how do you want to talk to those people? Now, the Barrier Islanders have a beautiful way of talking to one another, and there's a different kind of a languaging that goes on there. It's all English, but, they banter and they have words that an international client would never understand. So part of it is, how do you take that culture and then turn it into a voice for the international people that you want to visit your island, and not talk on your social media as if you were talking to an islander. And that's been really interesting, and we've had amazing, amazing results out of that.
What's the website, by the way?
So their website it's Great Barrier Island.nz, I think.
Great.
But you want to have a look at the Facebook page, which is Great Barrier Island, and we've just started up an Instagram account for them, which is Great Barrier Island Official. So it's literally just started up now.
But I think that's interesting. So you have this island, this very remote island with a very small occupancy that you were trying to reach out to the world, I guess, for tourism and get more people to come through and visit the island. Right. You want to maintain the authenticity and the integrity of their language and how they have that island banter back and forth, but you have to be able to be understood as well. So you have to find a way to tell that story a little bit differently internationally.
Correct. Absolutely. And each company has to learn to tell their story a little bit differently. Obviously, some of the companies that we deal with are very local. So they're people that sell vegetables and fruit, and they're people that there's a lady that is just phenomenal. Her name is Janine, and she's called her company Janine's Ice Dreams, and she sells organic ice cream.
Janine's Ice Dreams?
Yes.
That's great.
It's brilliant. So her whole branding and everything, but she's come on all the training. She's implemented everything. She's phenomenal, and she's left her corporate job to just do this.
That's a bit of nice brand storytelling right there, isn't it? Janine's Ice Dreams.
Ice Dreams, yes.
I'll have to look that up while we're chatting here too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so there's so many of them. There's Good Heavens, and Good Heavens are a stargazing company. So they take people out on these beautiful tours for stargazing, and you have a blanket and you have your hot chocolate, and they have the telescopes.
I'm there.
Beautiful. And
but that's the trick, though, isn't it, though, to be able to teach folks how they want to capture their own true, authentic voice in the stories they tell, but also not be so far afield that your audience doesn't understand. So it really begins by understanding who you are talking to and who you are for, first and foremost.
Absolutely. And this, Park, and it's so important that people really do understand that, but also keep that authenticity. And I love the fact that every single company there has done that. I also work with, obviously, other companies here in New Zealand and a few in Australia. And it's really intriguing because there's just such differences, I have another company in Australia that we work with, which is a roofing company, believe it or not, and they put gutter guard on roofs, so they're called Gutter Night. And the owner, Brian Brown, has been to every conference. He comes every year, and he's just absolutely phenomenal as a business owner. And he tells his story, in terms of how you protect yourself and what happens if, anything happens to your house. But the way that it's told is from an Australian perspective. So,
which is different than a New Zealander's, I guess.
well, here's the funny thing, because we have possums in New Zealand and they have possums in Australia. And we did, I put a photo up of a possum, and you've got possums obviously in the US. And I put a photo up of a possum and I said to him, "What do you think of this?" And he went, "No, that's not an Australian possum. Sorry."
Is there actually a difference?
Apparently, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
He said, well, not between Australia and New Zealand, but I put an American possum up apparently. And he said, no, Australian possums look much prettier. So that's a lot prettier.
With your social media conference, you've got a number of speakers coming. Who will be there? What kinds of companies in attendance? And what do you try to teach them? That again, that we could be learning out here too. Maybe it's a little bit different approach to social than what you've seen. I'm not sure, but are we all universally looking for the same things, or do we have to approach it a little bit differently depending on our cultural, how we view possums, depending on whether we're in America, Australia, or New Zealand?
I think in some respects you do, and I think that's part of your authenticity. So you're thinking about how authentic you want to be in your company and yourself. So I think that is important. I think universally everybody is kind of looking for the same thing, and for me, social media is about the people. So the Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, everything is just a medium for us to communicate to our people and for our people to listen to us, and vice versa. So it doesn't matter, I think if you look at it from that perspective and go, this is just a way of connecting with people that you never had the opportunity of connecting with before, but knowing how to use those platforms cleverly so that you can actually connect and that you can actually get out there and make a difference. I think that is universally what everybody looks for. I think people need to start with strategy. They need to start with understanding what they want to get out of it, what they want to achieve, and then move from there. The conferences, if I did comparisons, besides being absolutely social media marketing world being one of the most amazing conferences and absolutely huge, with real celebrities, at the conference. And I say celebrities because I think from an American perspective, because it is so huge, you have the opportunity of growing that celebrity status quite quickly if you're doing things right and if you're out there. On the flip side of it, here in New Zealand, I think we also have our little celebrities. So we have one of the speakers called How to Dad, and Jordan Watson, and he's going to be speaking at the conference. He is phenomenal and so funny. And he started out with his mission being, I want to do what I love, and that's being with my children. And how can I then use that to tell the story? So he's made all these little videos, YouTube videos of him and his kids. So how to take a child on a plane, how to change a nappy, how to deal with a difficult child for eating. And
his children's are the product and his service all at the same time. That's beautiful.
Hilarious. He's so funny, but brilliant.
And he'll be speaking.
He will be speaking, and he'll be telling his story of how he got into it. And he's made a living out of his YouTube channel, and he gets sponsored now. But he's still, and I love his integrity is still there. It's still about his children. Mm-hmm. So he's still about being a dad, first and foremost. And I think that is very inspirational for people to know that you can still you can still do something exciting and still be what you want to be.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. I've had a chance to talk to a couple really good storytellers from New Zealand. One of them was Chris Herbert of Kingswood Skis. I don't know if you know Chris. They are a small batch highly customized snow skiing company, manufacturer out of Christchurch. And
Okay.
she was on show number 141 of the Business of Story. And it's titled, How to Use Small Batch Brand Storytelling to Connect People with Place. And Chris is doing not only really interesting work with her Kingswood skis and the website, but how she's also using storytelling around bringing more people to Christchurch and some of the surrounding towns. Something you might be interested in with your own work. But for some of those that are planning on coming to the conference, that would be a great show. I don't know that she'll be at the conference, but it's a great show to listen to because she really does a nice job of addressing storytelling and that intersection of storytelling and social media.
I'll reach out to her.
Yeah.
I'll definitely reach out and I will listen to that show. It's wonderful to hear the stories from New Zealand, and there are amazing, amazing stories coming out of New Zealand. Lots of stories like that, Park.
Mm-hmm. We had another American expat down there, Cassie Roma, who I got a chance to sit on a panel discussion with at Social Media Marketing World. She was originally from San Diego, and she's been down in New Zealand for, 10, 15 years. I had her on the show about this time last year, show number 123, and it is another person, another professional doing some really amazing things down there with big brands and small brands and using brand storytelling and social. So that's show number 123, titled How to Tell Brand Stories on Purpose That Resonate with Your Audience. That would be another really good show I'd recommend for your attendees to, if they're looking for some pre-work before the big show.
Well, Cassie's spoken at the social media conference twice already. So one of the things that I love doing is having, special speakers coming back and talking again and sharing their wisdom. Her first show that she did with us, she was with Air New Zealand at the time. And she told these beautiful brand stories about Air New Zealand and, how staff could interact differently as a big brand with different people. And there was one example of the Beatles and people had taken the whole analogy wrong and how they had turned it around and made it into something quite unique and funny and interesting on Twitter. And I still have that. So, I mean, if anybody wants to reach out and find out more about that, I can point you in the right direction with that. But Cassie, an absolutely amazing, amazing storyteller, an amazingly beautiful person.
Yeah, she really is. She's just an absolute hoot. Got a chance to meet her and get better acquainted last year at Social Media Marketing World, and I'm hoping to see her down there in a month or so.
I hope so too. She's not talking at this conference at the moment, but I hope that she will pop in and come and see us, and that we can have a bit of a coffee together and have a chat.
That would be great. Now, Wanita, you come from very much the strategy, background of really helping brands get their social channels in place and understanding their audiences so they are telling the right stories. I'm going to turn the interview over to you now. What do you think your attendees would like to hear or like to learn about in brand storytelling? Because presumably, I just want to see how universal this is. Are they asking the same questions that our listeners are asking here that I will be getting at Social Media Marketing World? And maybe we can address some of those right now just to kind of prime the pump a little bit.
That would be so awesome. But before we go there, Park, I'd actually love to know from you, what inspired you to get into the business of story?
Well,
more inspiration.
Desperation. First, desperation led to inspiration. And some of our listeners know this already, but for those that don't, I have been in the advertising brand marketing world for 35 years, and I ran my own ad agency brand consultancy here in Phoenix, Arizona from 1995. Well, it's still open as my corporation, but all the people are gone. Some of them work for me in different capacities, but I chose to pivot away from the traditional brand advertising model in 2016 and pursue business of story fully at that point. I'd been working on it since about 2006. And the reason where the desperation came in, Wanita, is I saw things starting to change in 2006 where our traditional advertising, marketing, and approaches to branding, brand communication were no longer as effective. They were no longer as potent as they used to be. And I honestly didn't know why. I started scrambling a bit, and I had clients that were saying, "Hey, we're spending lots of money, but we're not getting the impact like we're expecting or we're hoping to." In fact, anything was declining. So I'm at this point a full 20 plus years into my career, and I'm thinking, how could I actually be getting worse at this than better? That didn't seem to make sense. So I looked at the environment around me, and I really realized at that point that the internet's technology and everything was really, really taking over. And it was a paradigm shift. The brands, I realized, no longer own the influence of mass media because the masses were becoming the media and have certainly since then become the media, and they own the brand stories. So that's when I dove in and tried to figure out what in the world is going on. And I was very lucky because the universe kind of conspired in one hand to knock me out of the old way of doing advertising and marketing and open up a new door, and that is through storytelling. And I learned that because our middle child, our son Parker, was going to film school at Chapman University in Orange, California between 2006 and 2010. And I said, Parker, since you're going there, while you're going there, and since we're paying for your books, please send them to me when you're done, because I want to know what Hollywood knows about communication storytelling that maybe I could learn from to become, again, a persuasive and compelling communicator in a world that was completely turned upside down, a la The Hero's Journey. And that's where I found Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, this universal pattern to story that had literally been around since the beginning of time. And you could see it from Gilgamesh, one of the very first stories ever recorded, to where we are today with the Lego movie. And you see the exact same pattern called The Hero's Journey. And once I saw this and recognized it for what it was an epiphany. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a pattern to how we go about life. Stories simply reflect that pattern. That's how we all, us Homo sapiens, understand that. And what if I was able to map that pattern to business and brand building and brand story creation? Could I create an intentional approach to brand storytelling that I knew could count on of being successful? And so it was a science experiment. I mapped it to the story cycle system is what I created, and the rest is history. It just blew up. It was so powerful and so interesting to me that I literally wrapped up, pivoted away from how I used to do advertising, including closing down, if you will, my traditional ad agency, and then started the Business of Story consultancy. And now I coach, teach, consult, and speak on the power of story to build personal brand influence, to build organizational brands and the people within them, and to build leaders to help them understand how to communicate internally using stories from very much of a branded focused mindset to help people buy into the narrative and the vision of what their organization is all about.
Oh, that is fantastic. It's such a heartwarming story. And I think there's so many of us that do go through that, Park, and take that journey and that turn our lives into stories, because that's what it's about, isn't it? You spoke about the story cycle system, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know and have heard about the story cycle system and things like that, but I went to Social Media Marketing World, and that's the first place that I was introduced to it. And it was mind-blowing. It was like, oh, wow. And yet so simple, You kind of think, oh, do you want to take us through just a little bit of that story cycle system for our viewers? So if anybody's listening here from New Zealand,
they can get a sense of it, sure.
Yeah.
And let me give you a little bit of the origin of it. That might really explain where it comes about. I kind of told you how I was exposed to it. But let me tell you, in doing this and pulling the story cycle system together, the way I communicate is I say, it is distilled from the timeless narrative structure of the ancients. It's inspired by the story artists of Hollywood, influenced by masters of persuasion, guided by trend spotters, and informed by how the mind actually grapples for meaning. So let me unpack that a little bit, because I actually had to put this together just to get my own head around it, because this applied science and bewitchery of story is so powerful. I had to understand from my logical left brain, how did it work? What is truly this template behind it? And then my emotional right brain is, how do you wield it and how do you use it to connect and move people to action? So, as I mentioned, when I said distilled from the timeless narrative structure of the ancients, that's purely Joseph Campbell, America's foremost mythologist, who first found what he called the monomyth, or the hero's journey, that has been around literally since the beginning of time. And that's when I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. So where else has this, played out? That's so I distilled it from that, but I was inspired by how Hollywood was using it. And one of the great books that I recommend to anybody out there is Christopher Vogler's The Writer's Journey. Now, Vogler was a storytelling, screenwriting coach and consultant at Disney when he was one of the first people to really identify the hero's journey and how it was playing out in all of these different movies. In The Wizard of Oz, before the hero's journey was even known, there it is lying in plain sight, to Star Wars and how Lucas used it to build his Star Wars empire and beyond. And I started seeing that. I started Blake Snyder, Save the Cat, is another writer, screenwriter who used the hero's journey, but he adopted it to his 15 beats of story. But it was very inspiring to me, because in Vogler's book, The Writer's Journey, he says, the hero's journey is not an invention, but an observation. And I love that, because it's not like something someone just made up, but Campbell observed this, and the Hollywood great screenwriters saw it in action. They observed it as well. He said it's a recognition of a beautiful design, or a set of principles that govern the conduct of life and the world of storytelling, the way physics and chemistry govern the physical world. So this is the applied science of story. And then he also says, and this is where, Wanita, I knew that we all could use it in our worlds, in our brand marketing and brand storytelling worlds. He goes on to say, even storytellers bend this mythic pattern to his, her own purpose for the needs of a particular culture. So it means that even though we've got this, set in Campbell's case, he had the 19 steps of the hero's journey. Vogler, Blake, as I mentioned, boiled it down to his 15 beats of stories, which follows it along. Vogler, in The Writer's Journey and how he worked with Disney, boiled it down to his 12 elements of the hero's journey. And I took that one step further and simply mapped it to business in 10 steps. And what I've learned in doing of the 10-step story cycle system is that any brand manager, any business, any person that wants to get their personal brand story straight to grow their influence, or their organizational story straight to grow their brand and their people, can follow this pattern and use it on a very strategic level, high level, that takes you through my version of the hero's journey called the story cycle system. And you can then also use this exact same pattern to the actual communications that you create right down in the trenches. And it just starts by starting in an ordinary world. Where is your hero? Where in the story cycle system, your hero is always your customer, as you identified earlier, understanding who they are and what they're about, where they are in their world, what's at stake, what is it that they want that you can help them get. You move into chapter 4, the call to adventure is why? Why do they want it? What has changed now in their world? Maybe it's something they've caused to change, or the world has changed around them, that they need you and your brand service more now than ever to achieve something that they want. Then we move into chapter 5, and that's the heroes and antagonists, or the antagonists and the obstacles. I call it villains, fog, and crevasses. So why don't your customers have what they're looking for? What do they have to overcome to adopt you into their life? Step 6 then is they meet you, the mentor or the guide, along their journey. So this is a point that I will make at your conference and everywhere I go: is the brand is not the hero of the story. Your customers are. Your brand and you actually play a much more important role, and that is of mentor or guide. After all, where would Dorothy be without Glinda, the Good Witch of the North? She wouldn't have found her way back to Kansas. Or Luke Skywalker without Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. He wouldn't have vanquished the Empire, so on and so forth. So that's where the brand comes into play. the rest of the pattern plays out over the next 4 chapters on the journey, what the success like, what does it all mean in the moral of the story? How do you connect the values and beliefs that your brand holds dear with the same values and beliefs that your customers hold dear through the stories that you tell and how they interact with your brand? And then finally, the final stage in this is both strategic and something that every story has to have in it is yet another call to action or to build a ritual. How do you make your brand story their story so that they share it with their world willingly, and you don't have to be out there just pounding on them with online inbound marketing, advertising? How do you tap into the most powerful form of marketing, that's word of mouth marketing, by getting them to share your story with their world?
That is so powerful. Park, really, really powerful. I love it. And I just took, a few notes that while you were saying that, especially with the audience or your audience being the hero of the actual story. And I think a lot of us forget that. We think that the business is the hero of the story and we're trying to help people, but we don't actually think of it from the perspective of the audience being the hero of the story. So I really love that. And your brand being the mentor and the guide and taking them on that journey is so powerful. And I think you've got so much to share with that.
Well, think about that real quick about your own client that you talked about in the Barrier Islands. When you first went to their website and you said, here they are speaking in their island banter, and they didn't really understand their audience. They were approaching this by just kind of, giving a data dump on who they are and what they're about. And, their customer will arrive at the fact of, this could be a pretty cool place to go to. But once they stop and they shift and they think about who actually comes here, why do they come here, what is the journey that they're on, that when they leave, they feel renewed, they feel resurrected, they feel like they have done something that has changed their life forever. What is that story, and how do we then share that with the multitudes like them that want to experience the same kind of journey, but just simply don't know that we are here as their mentor or guide in this beautiful island off New Zealand to help them experience their own hero's journey?
Absolutely. I love that. It's it just makes so much sense the way that you've put it together right now, as you've said that. And I think there are, on the Barrier Island, there's so many people, there are definitely groups of people that are making a difference, and there are definitely groups of people that come with this experience and do help the businesses. And obviously that's how I got on there, onto the island. But that just makes so much sense. So thank you for that.
Well, I was thinking one last thing about that too, is I'm looking forward to my own hero's journey to come down and visit you all, because I've never been to New Zealand. So in Campbell's terms, I will leave my ordinary world of working here in Phoenix and doing my ordinary daily stuff and go on this call to adventure when you invited me to come and speak down there. I don't have any assurances that it's going to be successful or I'm going to be successful or say the right things, but I'm going for it because it's fun, it's exciting. But I then get to move into and transform into this special world. That'll be your world, the world of New Zealand down under, and have all of those experiences so that when I return back to Phoenix, I will return with what Campbell once again called the boon of more knowledge, more expertise, more courage and confidence in how to talk about story around the world. And that's what we're all looking for in every one of our purchases, in our daily lives, in the adventures that we choose to take. And you just happen to be sitting in a world and work with people that are right in the heart of special worlds for people around the world. So it's a pretty cool thing to do.
Well, we're in the heart of the Lord of the Rings, aren't we?
Oh, and there's a hero's journey playing out.
Hero's journey, right?
Yeah, you look at the 12 steps of the hero's journey per Vogler, and then watch Frodo on the Lord of the Rings, and you will see it absolutely play out one step after the next after the next. It is a universal pattern.
Absolutely brilliant. And I'm so looking forward to you coming down under and just enjoying yourself. And, as you said, having your own story, building your own story around New Zealand and what you experience and how you experience it. And I'm hoping that we're going to really help you to see this country for what it is. It's absolutely phenomenal. A beautiful, beautiful little country that we have here. And I kind of, for me personally, I kind of equate it more to like a miniature Vancouver type of a thing, but more up, in the mountains and things like that. So further up BC, it's absolutely beautiful. It's like a smaller version of that, but with a totally its own unique culture, its own island culture. It's just gorgeous.
I can't wait.
I can't wait for you to be here, Park. It's going to be so exciting. I did want to ask you. I did want to ask you one question, and I think the audience will want to know that. So, in terms of advertising and things like that, because we talk about brands, we talk about telling the story and things like that. How do you take your story cycle system and how do you turn that into adverts? So, how do you break that up and tell the story in adverts? And the reason, and especially social media advertising, so Facebook or LinkedIn. And the reason why I'm asking you is because, yes, we know there's the audience. We understand that we're talking to the audience and things like that. But what would you do differently?
Well, when I mentioned earlier too that the story cycle system is inspired by the story artists of Hollywood, there was another gentleman there, Dr. Randy Olson, who's been on the show several times, and who taught me the and, but, and therefore construct, which I call the DNA of story. And what I coach and consult with any content creator, whether you're creating a 30-second TV commercial or a Facebook ad, Instagram post, and you're trying to find a story in it, is to first write your and button therefore. And we will talk about this at length at the conference, because it uses 3-act structure: setup, problem resolution, or setup, conflict, contradiction, resolution, beautifully. And it gets you super focused in your mind of what is your story theme. What is it that you're trying to help your audience overcome? Or how can you inflict some contradiction or some conflict into the messaging so that it stands out and it touches that nerve with audiences? And when you do this, you can write this and button therefore ABT statement in 1 or 2 sentences. It's very simple. This and this and this and this, but here's the problem, therefore here's the solution. Once you get really focused on that and you get it super clear, you can find creative ways to tell that story. If it's just an image with a headline, if it's maybe it's a short little video you're going to plug in, even down to we've used the story cycle system in 30-second videos. And it's not like you have to create 10 chapters that have to happen in 30 seconds. That's not it at all, Wanita. It's about finding the content that creates the story cycle system so that you are literally strategically thinking through the story arc of your communication in 30 seconds or less, and make sure that the major pillars or content points are there, whether they're spoken or they're seen by the audience, in the way maybe an actor or actress might be reacting emotionally to something. The idea here is to get marketers and content creators away from this setup resolution without spending any time creating the conflict or the contradiction that makes the resolution actually necessary in your customers or your reader's life. And we all do that because we want to cut to the chase and, man, I'm the best product for this. I'm the best offering for this. So just buy it here, without ever getting into the shoes of our audiences and understanding what do they care about and what are they up against that we can help them overcome. That's how we do it. I have just found that the more one studies narrative and story structure, doesn't mean you get handed a formula on how to do it. It gives you, as again, my good friend Dr. Olson says, a narrative intuition of setup, problem resolution that you can use in everything, in all of your communication. And now whenever I write anything, if it's a long form podcast even, or blog post, or setting up for this interview, I will think, what is my and button there for? That keeps me focused on the overall story theme. And then I will bring in stories and anecdotes to help support the points that support my overall story theme, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually makes perfect sense. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Park, with that. because you see it happen so often. You know, people are out there, buy my product. This is who I am, buy, and they're really not getting into the shoes of the customer. They're really not understanding the customer's needs. I am so excited to have you at the conference, and I'm so excited that you're going to be teaching people in New Zealand this. As I said, I've been through your session at Social Media Marketing World. One thing that I do want to say to the audience, if you are interested, so if you're in America and you want to come over to New Zealand for the conference, remember it's a business expense, so you can come. But for anybody in New Zealand, Australia listening to this, Parker's also going to be doing he's going to be doing an actual workshop as well in Australia, and he's going to be doing a workshop down under in Wellington and in Auckland after the conference. So we will let you know the details of that, Park, and I'll send the link through for you. But we'll let you know the details if you want to come and actually get a training session from Park for 3.5 hours to 4 hours of learning all of this. He's going to be doing that as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there, Park, for you, because I just think everybody should be learning this.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm really looking forward to it. One of the things I've gotten out of all of this is I first started with brand storytelling, but it has rapidly grown into leadership storytelling and how to build, camaraderie among your groups. And in this day and age of such divisiveness that we see here, certainly in North America, and you're seeing it around the world now, nationalism and this sort of thing, I think connecting through communication and ultimately through story is more powerful than ever. And it's going to be what really helps people not only stand out to help push their mission forward, but I think to help some of these countries heal and get people, reaching back across the aisles again, because they have to create understanding and empathy to become a very, very good storyteller. And when you do that, you start to get to live in other people's shoes, just like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And it's when you start to live in other people's shoes that you start to realize that there's so much difference. There's so many differences, and there's no right or wrong. It just is different. And I love the fact that you said it was healing, because I think people do need to heal in a lot of countries, and by telling the stories and having the empathy, that will help with it. I encourage every single person to kind of try and live in somebody else's shoes for a while, even from a different country, because you just become a much better person for it. You become more of a whole person for it, and you become more empathetic to people's plight when you've done that.
Without a doubt. I can't wait. Now, where can people learn more about Social Media Conference New Zealand if they want to go and get their ticket right now and fly in from around the world? That would be great fun. Where can we send them?
Love it. I'd love to have some more international clients. We do get a few of them, but it'd be so awesome to come here, and we'll entertain you and give you a great time. So you go to socialmediaconference.co.nz, or NZ, as you say.
Oh, I love it. I love being in your shoes on NZ. That's great. Socialmediaconference.co.nz or NZ.
That's it, NZ. Pretty straightforward. You hit the website, and you can go through it, and you can book it. I think it's great for Americans coming from the US to New Zealand to actually come and experience some of the speakers. Yeah, we have absolutely amazing speakers on our side as well, and sometimes they don't always get the lift that American speakers get, mainly because of population and because of the size of the country. Obviously they're known here, but from an American point of view, you guys wouldn't really know them, but they are absolutely phenomenal. People like you've spoken about, Cassie Roma. She's incredible. As I said, she won't be speaking at this conference, but maybe we'll convince her. But she's absolutely incredible. People like our speakers that we have at the moment, we've got Jordan, we've got Kelly Locatelli actually coming from the US as well, and she's on the social media team with The Voice, so Team Blake and Team Adam of The Voice.
Blue Fox Media.
For that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Blue Fox Media. So she's coming through, which is fantastic. We have people like Mike Doughty, who has been really involved, and he's actually with Infusionsoft, and Infusionsoft are one of our sponsors. So he is a partner of Infusionsoft,
which is located right here,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, headquartered right here in Phoenix.
An incredible person to know and understand, how everything fits in. So we've just got, I think we've got 25 speakers.
Yeah, it's a full agenda, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And that is Friday, March 1st, Saturday, March 2nd. And then we'll be doing ongoing Business of Story workshops throughout New Zealand and Australia following that.
Correct. Absolutely. So really looking forward to it. And those workshops will be put up on a separate page so that people can go and have a look at them and book, and we'll be starting the advertising of those as well. And hopefully we'll tell the story on those.
I'll put you to the test.
Oh, you'll have to. I'm going to be reaching out and going, what do you think there?
Well, Wanita, thank you so much for taking the time. And I know we've tried to put this interview together for a couple of weeks now, and your locale, my locale, the interwebs weren't cooperating. You took the time to go into that beautiful studio you're at today. And I really appreciate the effort, and I cannot wait to come out to work with you and the fine folks of New Zealand and talk about brand and business storytelling.
I cannot wait to give you a big hug at the airport. I'm going to meet you there.
I'm counting on it.
And you and your wife, and you'll have an amazing time. So I can't wait to have you here.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you all for listening to this special edition of the Business of Story. If you like what you heard and you've got friends, family, colleagues, people that are trying to get their brand story straight through social media, feel free to share this episode with them. It helps expand our audience, our reach, and your street cred with your friends that listen to it and benefit from it. So I appreciate that. And of course, if I can be of service to you at all in any way, shape, or form, please reach out to me at park@businessofstory.com or visit me on the website where I've got a ton of tools and techniques just ready for you to teach you the applied science and bewitchery of storytelling. And until next week, when we have another amazing story artist like Wanita on from around the world, I want you to remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.